Most people think Amish bishops are dictators who control their communities with iron fists. The reality is more complicated and more democratic than outsiders expect. What happens inside twice-yearly council meetings reveals a system that balances leadership with congregational power. The misconception. The common belief is simple. An Amish bishop makes all the rules. He decides what technology his community can use. He determines clothing standards. He controls who gets shunned and who stays in good standing. When outsiders imagine Amish church structure, they picture a single authoritarian figure wielding unchecked power over hundreds of families. This image fits certain assumptions about insular religious communities. It suggests top-down control, where members follow orders without question. But this understanding misses how Amish church governance actually functions in most settlements across North America. Congregational vote. Amish bishops do not make rules alone. Major decisions about the Ordnung, the unwritten set of guidelines governing Amish life, require congregational approval. Twice a year, before spring and fall communion services, each district holds a council meeting called Ordnungsgemeine. Every baptized adult member, male and female, is expected to attend unless seriously ill. The bishop leads the discussion. He presents issues that need resolution. Should the district allow battery-powered tools in workshops? Should members be permitted to hire drivers for business travel beyond a certain distance? Should restrictions on buggy styles be modified? After discussion, the congregation votes. Women vote alongside men. This is not a formality. The vote determines whether proposed changes become part of the Ordnung or whether existing rules remain unchanged. Two-person veto. The voting system is designed to make change difficult. This reflects Amish emphasis on tradition and caution about adopting new practices. In most districts, if two or more people reject a proposed change to the Ordnung, the rule remains as it was. This means a small minority can block modifications that the majority might support. The system protects against rapid shifts that could destabilize community standards. It ensures that changes happen only when consensus is nearly unanimous. A bishop who wants to allow a new technology cannot simply announce the decision and expect compliance. He must convince the congregation. If even two members object strongly enough to vote against the proposal, it fails. This creates a high bar for change. It also means that bishops who try to push their personal preferences without community support will face repeated defeats in council meetings. Bishop's role. So what does a bishop actually decide? He has authority to bring issues to a vote. He can propose that the district discuss whether to permit a specific technology or modify a clothing standard. He officiates at baptisms, weddings, communions, and funerals. He coordinates with ministers and deacons who help lead the district. He visits members who have violated Ordnung rules, attempting to bring them back into compliance before any formal discipline occurs. But he does not unilaterally impose new regulations. His role is more like a moderator and spiritual guide than a lawmaker. In practice, bishops vary in temperament and leadership style. Some are more conservative, resistant to any change. Others are more progressive, willing to consider new practices if they do not threaten core values. Some bishops carry significant personal influence because members respect their wisdom and judgment. Others face resistance from congregations who view them as too strict or too lenient. But regardless of personality, the structural limits remain. The congregation votes. The bishop cannot override that vote. Technology decisions demonstrate how this system works in practice. When a church member wants to use a new tool or device, the issue eventually reaches the bishop. A farmer might ask whether solar panels can power electric fences. A business owner might request permission to use a computer for accounting purposes. A family might propose installing a telephone in a small building separate from the main house. The bishop does not simply say yes or no. He brings the question to the ministerial team, which includes other ordained leaders in the district. They discuss whether the technology aligns with Amish values. Will it create dependence on the outside world? Will it disrupt family life or pull members toward worldly pursuits? Will it give some families unfair economic advantages over others? After this preliminary discussion, the bishop presents the issue at the next Ordnungsgemeinde. Members debate the proposal. Some argue that the technology is necessary for economic survival in modern markets. Others warn that it represents the first step toward compromise with the world. The vote follows. If the congregation approves, the technology becomes acceptable within that district. If they reject it, members must find alternative methods or risk discipline for violating the Ordnung. Excommunication process. Decisions about excommunication follow a specific process that limits bishop authority. When a church member violates Ordnung rules, the bishop does not immediately impose shunning. First, he and other ministers visit the offending member privately. They explain the violation and ask the person to confess the error and cease the behavior. If the member refuses or continues the violation, additional visits follow. The ministry gives repeated opportunities for repentance. Only after these efforts fail does excommunication become a possibility. At that point, the bishop brings the case before the congregation during a members' meeting. He presents the facts. The accused member may speak in their own defense or confess and ask for forgiveness. The congregation then votes on whether excommunication is warranted. This is not the bishop's personal decision. The community as a whole determines whether a member should be placed under the ban and subjected to Meidung, the practice of social shunning. If the vote supports excommunication, the bishop announces the decision and oversees its implementation, but even then, the door remains open for restoration. A shunned member can return at any time by confessing before the bishop or the congregation. After a period, usually around 6 weeks, they can be reinstated through another congregational vote. Marriage requirements. Bishops play a significant role in marriage decisions, but again within defined limits. Amish couples cannot marry unless both partners are baptized members of the church in good standing. This rule is non-negotiable across all districts. The bishop verifies that both individuals have completed baptism and maintain their vows. He ensures that neither partner is under church discipline or shunning. He confirms that both come from families within the Amish community, as marriage to outsiders is forbidden. In most settlements, the couple approaches the deacon first, who announces their intention to marry during a church service. The bishop then meets with the couple to discuss their readiness for marriage and the responsibilities they will assume. He officiates at the wedding ceremony itself, which takes place during a regular church service on a weekday, usually a Tuesday or Thursday, during the slower agricultural season between late October and early December. The bishop has authority to deny marriage if one partner is not baptized, or if either has unresolved violations of the Ordnung, but he cannot arbitrarily refuse to marry a couple who meets all requirements. He cannot dictate who should marry whom based on personal preference. His role is to verify compliance with established rules and guide couples towards successful marriages grounded in faith and community values. The congregation expects him to uphold standards, not impose his own judgment on matters already settled by tradition. Ordnungsgemeinde meetings. The Ordnungsgemeinde meeting is where bishop authority and congregational power meet most directly. These council meetings happen twice a year, always before communion services in spring and fall. The timing is deliberate. Communion represents unity within the body of believers, and that unity requires agreement on the rules governing community life. The bishop opens the meeting by reading or reciting portions of the Ordnung. He may highlight areas where questions have arisen or where members have requested clarification. He presents new issues that need decision. The format varies by settlement, but generally allows for open discussion. Members can voice concerns, ask questions, or argue for or against proposed changes. Debates can become heated, particularly when economic pressures push members toward technologies that older generations view as worldly compromise. The bishop moderates this discussion, but he does not control it. After sufficient debate, he calls for a vote. In some districts, voting is done by show of hands. In others, members stand to indicate their position. The results are visible to everyone present. If the vote fails to achieve the necessary consensus, the issue is tabled. It may return at the next Ordnungsgemeinde or be dropped entirely. If the vote succeeds, the change becomes part of the Ordnung immediately. Members who attended the meeting leave knowing exactly what rules now govern their behavior until the next council session 6 months later. Varying authority. Bishop authority varies dramatically across different Amish settlements. In Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, the largest and oldest Amish community, bishops tend to have less individual power because the settlement is more progressive and members expect greater voice in decisions. Changes happen through extensive discussion and consensus building rather than top-down directives. In contrast, conservative settlements like the Schwarzentruber Amish in Ohio or New York give bishops more influence, though even there, congregational approval remains necessary for major changes. The bishop's personal reputation affects his practical authority. A bishop known for wisdom, fairness, and deep biblical knowledge will carry weight when he speaks in council meetings. Members listen when he argues for or against a proposal. His opinions shape debate even though he cannot dictate outcomes. A bishop viewed as heavy-handed or out of touch with the economic realities facing younger families will face resistance. His proposals may fail repeatedly. Over time, such resistance can create tension that leads families to leave for other districts or even other settlements where the leadership aligns better with their views. Some bishops earn reputations as particularly strict or particularly lenient, and these reputations spread across settlements. Families considering where to relocate often investigate the bishop's approach before buying land in a new district. This creates a kind of market system where bishops who become too authoritarian lose members, while those who lead with the congregation's support maintain stable, growing districts. Geographic differences also play a role in bishop authority. Bishops in smaller, newer settlements often face different challenges than those in established communities with hundreds of families. A bishop leading a settlement of just 15 families in Montana or Kentucky may have more informal influence simply because everyone knows each other intimately and discussions happen in smaller, more personal contexts. In larger settlements like Holmes County, Ohio, where multiple districts exist within a few miles of each other, bishops must coordinate with neighboring bishops to maintain some consistency in Ordnung standards. If one district allows a technology that neighboring districts forbid, families might migrate to the more permissive district, creating pressure on stricter bishops to relax rules or risk losing younger members to nearby communities with more lenient leadership. Removal possibility. Bishops serve for life in most cases. The position is not term limited, and there is no mandatory retirement age. A man chosen by lot to be bishop at age 40 might serve for 40 more years. This creates stability but also potential problems when a bishop becomes unable to fulfill his duties or acts contrary to Amish teachings. In extreme circumstances, a bishop can be removed. If he commits serious moral violations, such as adultery or financial fraud, the congregation can ask him to step down. If he becomes too ill or mentally incapable of leading, he may be relieved of duties even if he retains the title. If he attempts to impose rules that the congregation repeatedly rejects, or if he fails to uphold standards that the community expects, pressure can build for his removal. The process for removal varies by settlement, but generally requires action by other ordained leaders and congregational approval. It is rare and considered a serious matter. Most bishops who face health limitations simply reduce their active involvement, while younger ministers take on more responsibility. In some cases, a second bishop is ordained to assist or eventually replace the aging leader. The possibility of removal, however uncommon, serves as a check on bishop power. A bishop who knows he can be removed for serious misconduct or for repeatedly overriding congregational will has incentive to lead with humility and respect for the community's voice. This reinforces the fundamental principle that Amish church governance is not a dictatorship, but a form of congregational democracy guided by ordained leaders who serve rather than rule. The burden of lifelong service weighs heavily on many bishops. Unlike pastors in other denominations who receive formal training, salaries, and defined working hours, Amish bishops are chosen suddenly by lot with no preparation for the responsibility. They must continue supporting themselves through farming or other work while managing the spiritual needs of an entire district. They receive no compensation for performing weddings, funerals, or baptisms. They cannot retire when they turn 65 or step down when the work becomes overwhelming. Many bishops privately express the weight of this calling, knowing that every decision they make affects families for years